Hi everyone, Sheryl Grant here again, Director of Social Networking for the Haystack MacArthur Foundation Digital Media and Learning Competition. Haystack administers the Badges for Lifelong Learning Competition, and we are partners this year with the Mozilla Foundation in the Badges for Lifelong Learning Competition. And joining me for this webinar today is Erin Knight, who's Assessment and Badge Project Lead for Open Badges with Mozilla. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we move into the main part of our webinar today with Erin. For those of you who want to follow in real time, please look for us under DML Badges. If you want to be interacting with us, asking questions as we go through the webinar, or I'm sorry, at once Erin has finished her slides and you want to ask questions, you can submit those questions through the chat box in the GoToMeeting box that should be on your screen. We will be archiving the webinar on dmlcompetition.net on the blog. You should see that as one of the links in the navigation. We have archived and posted the last webinar. It's a similar one that we had today, but we had David Theo Goldberg joining us, and he answered some questions about the process. So for those of you who have process-oriented questions or want to hear a repeat of that webinar, that was one that was the same theme but has some additional content for those of you who are trying to ask more specific questions about the process of applying. I recommend you go to dmlcompetition.net to the blog, and on January 4th, Ruby posted the archive for that webinar. So go ahead and take a look at that if you have some questions that are specific to process. If we don't get to your questions today, feel free to submit those to dml@hri.edu. I want to make sure I've got that correct. I think it should be up on your screen. I might have missed something there, but go ahead and submit those questions to us, and we'll have the Digital Media and Learning Competition team respond. You can ask questions on Twitter. I also wanted to make sure people knew there's a big deadline tomorrow for the research competition, and then January 17th, for those of you who may not have caught it, we did extend the deadline for Stage 2, and that is now January 17th, Tuesday, when your applications will be due. You can go ahead and start your applications now, keep those open and revisit them, and that might help you avoid having to worry about some of the technical details at last minute. And the deadline for that is 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, January 17th. So let's go ahead and introduce Erin. Erin is going to go ahead and talk us through the upcoming slides that she's put together. I do want to make sure for those of you who ask specific questions, we always want to make sure we give everyone fair treatment. So we don't provide feedback on your specific proposal, but general questions we're more than happy to address. So Erin, if you're there, let's throw it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. I think Ruby has to let me do that. One second while we share my screen. All right. Okay, so you guys should now be seeing my slides. And as I said on the last one, I think the first time we did this, I tried to present it full screen in presenter mode, and everybody saw black screen. So we'll just do it kind of little Band-Aid operation here. But yeah, I'm Erin Knight, and I work at Mozilla, and I lead the Open Badges project there, and I'm working with Haystack and MacArthur on this competition. So my goal today is just to give you a little bit of sort of background, best practices, kind of suggestions around your thinking for badge system design. One thing to note, of course, is that as you look around, you've probably noticed there's not a lot of badge systems out there, and so a lot of this stuff is, you know, obviously we are kind of sort of inventing this or experimenting with this as we go along. So a lot of this is based on the knowledge that we have now, and we really look at this as something that we're sort of building together. So don't feel like you're confined to anything I say here, of course. So stage 2, as I'm sure you've all looked at the RFP, but that it is the sort of called the design stage. One thing to really note here, again, is that it's a badge system design. We are, you know, talking about more than just designing the image of a badge, but a lot more sort of behind it, which we'll get into today. But proposals are supposed to be aligned with content from stage 1. So the winners have been announced from stage 1 and are available on the website, as well as all of the collaborator content like NASA and Intel and other collaborators. So your proposals should be essentially proposing a badge system for that content, or you can, if you have an idea for a badge system that's sort of separate from the content, you can propose that with other content, but if you are selected as a winner, you would then be matched with the winning content to move forward. So it's a little confusing, but basically the idea is that the badge systems that are ultimately designed will be based on the content that has won in stage 1, or the collaborator content, and then all of the sort of stage 2 designs we're talking about now will be aligned with that content. So again, we're talking about a badge system here, and there aren't a lot of examples to point to, but we're thinking about it more than just the badges themselves, although those are obviously very important, but also the assessments and the criteria, the supporting systems that might be needed, like various technologies or environments or interactions. Obviously, there's going to be sort of a different set of things required based on the content that you're working with. There is some content in the winning content that already has a lot of assessments and the criteria are already baked in. There's some that have very robust online learning environments, and there's some that don't really have a lot of that as well. So filling those gaps will be something that will obviously be part of this proposal as well. One thing to note, though, of course, is that this sounds like a lot, and it is, but you don't actually have to have all of the details worked out for the proposal by January 17th. The idea is to have a pretty, comprehensive plan and ideas around how you might tackle some of these problems or gaps. But then, how it actually gets implemented is obviously something that we will all work out over the next year if your design is selected. I thought it would be helpful to take a couple slides to just talk about the Mozilla Open Badge infrastructure quickly, because all of the badge systems that are developed through this competition will actually plug into the infrastructure, and there are things that the infrastructure can help you do, which I will sort of pull out as we continue through my slides. But it's just sort of helpful to have a general understanding of what I'm talking about. So basically, the Mozilla is building the Open Badge infrastructure, and the idea is it's essentially a standard or specification for badges and a group of repositories for storing badges and combining badges. That essentially the idea is that sits under this badge ecosystem that we're trying to create. So it's essentially the plumbing for the ecosystem. And what we're trying to do is have this kind of common technological infrastructure that will allow there to be lots of different badge issuers in the ecosystem. So all of the badge systems that you're thinking of designing plus a lot more, and that any given learner or user can actually earn badges across these different issuers, pull those badges into a single collection that they control, and then share them out. So it's a way to really stitch the ecosystem together, as well as really kind of elevate the badges and the value of the badges by allowing them to sort of have a life cycle, to actually move beyond just a single learning experience and be combined and shared. So again, this core infrastructure is going to be is tied into this competition in that all of the winning badge systems that are designed must be interoperable with the Open Badge infrastructure, and again plug into the Open Badge infrastructure. Now, what interoperability means, we really don't have to get into the details with this, because again, at this stage, at stage 2, your proposal certainly does not have to go into the details about how you'll plug in. It's just more about that you need to be aware that you are. But it is pretty simple in how to be interoperable. And what you see here along the right is an example of what we call the badge manifest, or metadata specification. And again, that's really the sort of crux of what we're doing here, is just defining what we think a badge should be. And it's a set of information so that any time a badge is shared, or wherever a badge is consumed, it carries all the information that you need to understand that badge. So So again, you don't need to know the details of this, but I think it's very helpful to think about a badge that way as you're thinking about designing a badge system, because again, it's not just an image that we're going to be putting on a site. It's actually kind of a gateway to a bunch of information that really tells about learning experiences or achievements and that kind of thing. So there are a couple badge system models that we thought it was helpful to walk through. One thing to note, though, is that I personally don't think that these systems are sort of that there's a strong delineation between the systems. I think there's a lot of overlap, as you'll see as we go through some of the examples. And again, you certainly are not constrained to having to follow any of these models, but it is kind of helpful to just kind of see some different approaches to sort of help ground our thinking here. So the first one is training or leveling systems. And these are the most common that I've seen and certainly have worked with. But these are skill-based systems. There's typically a clear criteria for reward and an assessment. So often there's kind of very distinct skills that people are submitting work for and are getting assessed on, and then are earning badges that represent those skills. There's often kind of a trajectory of levels so that you're sort of leveling up, if you will, or that maybe there's a basic level, working up to an expert level in these various skills. And they often expire. So an example here is a couple examples are first aid training or scuba diving certification. And obviously these aren't digital badge systems at this time, but they're good sort of metaphors. And as we probably all know, that these actually expire. You have to get first aid training every year or so many years. And if you think about a skill like a programming language or like HTML, that changes quite often. If you were to earn an HTML badge today and you didn't actually do anything with that, in 10 years, your skills are probably outdated. So a couple other examples are the School of Webcraft badge program. That's a partnership between Mozilla and PWU. And I'm actually going to walk through that system a little bit later in detail since I was working on designing that system, and this is a screenshot of that system on the right. And also Khan Academy, which you'll see it in here a couple more times as well. So another model above and beyond the system is dynamic dossier system model, and this is so less about discrete skills like we just looked at. So you wouldn't see a badge for a particular skill here, but more about tracking ongoing performance, sort of ranking and leveling, and it's very, very data rich. It's very kind of behind the scenes, logic driven, sort of based on your performance and participation within these various sites or experiences. So an example which you see on the right here is Top Coder, where people are actually participating in competitions, coding competitions, and are earning points while doing that and sort of moving up in the community. This is a screenshot of their sort of dashboard where you can see somebody's performance. So again, it's less about these discrete skills and more about kind of this ongoing achievement or competition. And then the third model here is a social system, which is more about kind of community interaction and participation and less about skills. Focus here is on peer connection, kind of reputation, reinforcement of community values, and again, less about sort of what we would consider harder skills. An example here is Stack Overflow, and if you noted on the slide before, I actually had Stack Overflow as a dynamic dossier system too. So again, I think there are crossovers in these models, and some systems actually have have some versions of their badge system that sort of reflect multiple models, and I think that's probably even a good idea to consider as you're thinking through this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But with Stack Overflow, you're earning badges based on your participation in this community forum, and so the badges are really reflective of kind of the community values and sort of and that participation in that community, and have a lot of value within that community as well. So those are the three models, or at least three examples of models. Again, you don't feel like you need to map to any single one of them or exactly follow the examples that we have there, but they are good examples to kind of work from. What I wanted to do next was go through a list of badge system characteristics, and these are actually listed outright on the Stage 2 RFP. And the idea is really just they're general characteristics that are helpful to think through, and in many cases helpful to have answers for, solutions for, when you're designing a badge system. So it's not certainly not a comprehensive list. I'm sure there's many other characteristics of badge systems that we could have listed, and it also is not required that you are sort of exhaustive in representing these characteristics in your actual proposal. So the idea is that it's that you should think through this, and it certainly will be helpful for you to think through this. But sort of what you choose to kind of represent in your proposal is up to you. So the first one, and I think this is actually a combination of two, it's content and skills. So this one I think everybody will address in their proposal because it's pretty important, since it's what are the badges and what is the domain that you're working with. So what is the kind of discipline or learning area that you're working in, and sort of what do those badges represent? What are the skills that the badges are going to represent? One sort of best practice here is to really consider hard and what some call softer skills. We do have kind of the opportunity with badges to badge a wider range of skills, and so things that often get kind of ignored or neglected, like collaboration or teamwork or community building, which are obviously very important skills. We now can actually include badges for those, in addition to things like the JavaScript or addition or subtraction, or the kind of obvious types of skills that we currently recognize. So again, as you're thinking about your badge system, certainly think about a mix of hard and soft skills, and sort of how to best represent the learning that's occurring. Again, are these skills discrete or continuous? Kind of looking back at the training versus the dossier system, are you going to have badges that are actually about a skill that someone has demonstrated, or sort of badges about various kind of more abstract levels that people are going to achieve? So then there's scarcity and granularity. Another benefit of badges here, in addition to allowing us to capture more skills, is that we can actually get more granular with those skills, and so we can kind of capture more along the learning path. If you think about the way that transcripts or degrees work right now, I mean, obviously those are very abstracted, and you don't really have a sense of kind of what the skills or the learning was along the way, and often that's lost. And so if two people have the same degree, that's pretty much as much as you can know about them. It's impossible to sort of know the different specialties or skills that they've learned along that sort of pathway. So again, badges really allow us to really capture more and sort of have permanent records of that along the way. Also, obviously, rarity or scarcity is important to consider. So, badges that are more difficult to get or are more rare, less people have, are obviously going to have more value in the community. But both of these are actually a delicate balance, and there's a trade-off there. So with granularity, sort of how granular you get is certainly a big question. And the example I use, which may not mean something to everyone, but is if we're thinking about teaching HTML, we could have a badge for HTML which just says, okay, you know HTML, here's your badge. And that's pretty, it's not very granular in that actually covers a bunch of stuff that you would need to know. Or coming to this totally opposite end of the spectrum, we could actually issue badges for every single HTML tag. Like once you learn the A tag, you could get an A tag badge. And that starts to get a little ridiculous because you're going to have hundreds, thousands of badges that really don't mean a whole lot in and of themselves. And so again, it's kind of like finding that sweet spot of sort of what is granular enough to really capture the learning that's happening, but but sort of realistic and still having value. I mean, again, and there's no answers really around this because this is all very new, so but it's just something to consider and sort of play around with. Same with rarity. Obviously, if something's too difficult to achieve across the board, then people are just not going to get it, and therefore the value is sort of a moot point. Another big characteristic to consider is levels, and the idea here is there a hierarchy to your badges? Do people level up through badges? Are there prerequisite badges? Do badges actually aggregate to some other badge or to some other level or identity? I think a lot of badge systems that we'll see will probably have levels. Because again, we're talking about a lot of learning badges here, and obviously we're trying to sort of push a pathway, or at least offer different pathways for people to learn. And so, if we're thinking about using those badges as the sort of way to move people through pathways, then typically there's going to be some kind of leveling or order that people sort of are moving through this. One thing to note here on the Open Badge infrastructure, again, your connection with Open Badge infrastructure means you're pushing badges outside of your learning experience and into the kind of broader ecosystem where users can share them with other people and combine them with other badges. So one consideration point around leveling is which badges would you actually want to push. So if you had a bunch of sort of smaller badges that then aggregated up to a higher level badge, do you actually want to push the smaller badges? Like, do those have value outside of your community, or do you want to just push the higher level badge? So another thing to sort of play around with. Another set of characteristics are role or identity and opportunities. Again, there's a lot of crossover between these. This is very tied to leveling. But the idea is, are there various identities that are represented by the badges? Do achieving these various identities or roles unlock privileges? Like, what do people get once they have assumed a certain role? And kind of what sort of stories can you use to tell? Can you use the badges to tell about yourself? So I think this is a really kind of fun one to think about, and certainly to me a really, really important part of a lot of the badge systems that I thought about, because again, it's really sort of making this real for people. Like, what badges are they going to want to get? Like, what combination and what sort of what do they want? What do they think that says about themselves, and how does that affect their reputation and role within that community? Performance and assessment. This is another one that I think everybody will need to address. But basically, it's what is the criteria behind the badges. So again, a badge is not just a badge, but is a representation of some learning or achievement that has occurred. And so what does somebody need to do or achieve to actually earn that badge? So again, assessment is important here, and there will be some balance dependent on how much of that assessment already exists in the content side itself. But one thing to note here is that I think we also have an opportunity to be pretty innovative with assessments here as well, and really kind of think out of the box about assessments that really reflect the types of learning that were already occurring. Because often we're talking about informal learning, interest-driven learning, where people are already sort of seeking this out on their own. And so how can we actually assess that in a way that really kind of honors that environment? Permanence. Do the badges expire? Again, we talked about with some of the training or leveling badges, they expire. So would you see various badges expire, and how would you allow somebody to renew that badge on your site? Would there be additional assessments that they could come back and complete, or just that kind of thing? Portability, transparency. So kind of just again, some of this is a little bit philosophical in a way, but certainly very, very valuable to think about. But kind of how are the badges valued within your community, and how are they valued outside of the community? Are there certain badges that are kind of more valued just within the community and probably should live there, versus some that are going to carry their value sort of across that ecosystem? A related question is, like, what's the ultimate goal of those badges? Are you trying to, are you looking at these badges as tools for jobs, or are they really about motivating additional learning within your site. So things to think about there. Protection, so how can you protect against gaming? This is a huge question. I mean, obviously, the more valuable the badges become, the more people will try to game them. And we don't really know yet because we don't have a lot of examples out there in the system, but in the ecosystem. But just something to certainly be aware of and try to bake into your thinking as much as possible. So you'll see as I go through an example that we did a few things with assessment to try to avoid gaming. But endorsement, could endorsement add value? So that one of the things that the OBI, the Open Badge Infrastructure, provides is an endorsement system, which allows you to have third parties endorse your badges. So, for example, if Mozilla were to do web design badges, maybe an MIT or someone like that might decide that they really like our badges and assessments, and they could actually endorse those badges. And so that information then would be carried with the badge and would obviously add some value to those badges. So, one question is, would there be endorsers that you would want to also bring on board with your badge system? And then finally, design. And I think this is the first thing that people think of, and I sort of intentionally put it at the end because it's an important piece for sure, because this is going to be the first thing or the gateway that people see for these badges. But it's certainly, as you've seen as we've gone through all of these characteristics, only a very small part of the thinking. But obviously, if there's theming or branding, that's something that you'll want to consider as well. And there's a couple other things in the RFP that, in addition to the characteristics, there's teams and technologies. And so I thought I would just briefly talk about those quickly. But really, the idea with team is that we sort of all understand, or we're understanding more and more that badge systems are pretty complex, and that, again, we're not talking about just kind of one person making a few badge images and that's that. There's obviously a lot to it. There's people that have been designing the content and the sort of learning experiences. There's people that are thinking through the badges, thinking through the assessments, working on the technology part of it. So the goal with this competition is to really sort of build out those teams that can make high-quality badge systems together. So the point of this in this RFP is for you to really think about what skills you already have and where there's gaps, and to express that so that if your content is pushed or if your designs are picked to move forward, we can really help you sort of build out that team to make sure that you can build out your system. And then technology, and this is one slide, but this is actually a pretty big thing because, again, we're talking about systems that are going to often manage the learning experiences and assessments, issue the badges. Perhaps there's profiles with sort of badges on that system. There's interoperability with the Open Badge infrastructure, which we've talked about. Again, you don't have to have all of this worked out, but that there should be some kind of at least consideration of how that's going to be managed. And some content providers already have the system in place, but many do not. And obviously, from Mozilla, we are very excited about the opportunity for a lot of this kind of technology components to be open, and we call it, or to be kind of widgetized, if you will. So as you're thinking about the technology systems, definitely think about if there's a way to do it that could be repurposed by other people that are trying to build badge systems, because that is highly, highly welcomed and recommended. So very, very quickly, I wanted to go through an example of a badge system that I actually worked on building and sort of align it with the characteristics that we just talked through to sort of help give an example and just make things a little real, and also show you the trade-offs that we made as we worked through this, because there certainly are decisions that you make, the things that you're going to cut for now and that kind of thing. So we basically designed a badge system for the School of Webcraft, which is a partnership between Mozilla and peer-to-peer university, basically offering web development, training, and technology courses through the peer-to-peer university model, which is obviously peer-to-peer, but with no teacher, no kind of authority, more about communities getting together around open education resources to learn particular things. So it gives us, the flexibility to have pretty lightweight courses around very new technologies or new approaches, as well as really kind of capitalize on the social nature of sort of web development anyway, and allow people to kind of really learn together. But so basically we wanted, on top of that, we wanted to build in a recognition system so that people could actually earn badges for the skills and experiences that they were having, and then use those hopefully to get jobs. So on the first characteristic, content and skills, we had a mix of hard skill badges and quote unquote softer skill badges. We had basically hard skill like JavaScript and PHP, and then the softer skill badges were things like peer mentors, innovator, problem solver, good communicator, community builder. So we had a mix, and in fact, we had done some research with employers of web developers, and they the employers had basically said that the most important skills to them were the softer skills. That if somebody was a problem solver and a good communicator, you probably could teach them the hard skills that you needed, or the specific technologies that we're using, but it was really about finding the right people with those softer skills, and in fact that's also the hardest thing for people to understand, certainly not on a transcript or a degree, and so we felt it was really important to include those as well. Scarcity and granularity, so we thought a lot about this. Again, I used the example of the HTML badge before. What we ended up doing for the pilot was actually go with a fairly high level, where we actually had a JavaScript badge or HTML badge, and so we weren't as granular as we want to be moving forward. But for the pilot purposes, we decided to just sort of kind of make that trade-off and start with the kind of higher level badges to begin with. And again, we were also the first badge system to plug into the Open Badge infrastructure, and so that's part of the reason why we decided to start with the sort of higher level badges, because again, those kind of communicate well across the ecosystem. But we certainly are working on being much more granular moving forward. Levels, we had basic and expert, which was another oversimplification for this pilot. Again, there's trade-offs you make to just kind of get something out the door, and certainly all of these are kind of in pilot mode as we move forward. So we basically had just basic and expert, and we plan to have more levels moving forward, and we're also working on a Web Making 101 badge, so various skill badges would aggregate up to that badge. Roles and identity, again, we had the basic and expert, which actually did carry quite a significant weight within the community. A lot of people are seeking out expert badges or expert badge holders for various things like helping them put together a course, or just as various mentors. We also had what we call gurus, which really were people that had earned the expert badge or an expert badge already. This gave them the ability to then assess the other people that had submitted for that expert level badge, but it also definitely gave them sort of this notoriety and sort of reputation within the community. And we didn't really know how this was going to work out, so we didn't do a lot of thinking about what that meant, like what kind of access people got. I mean, obviously with the gurus, the access was that they got to assess other submissions, but above and beyond that, we hadn't done a lot of thinking around that. So that's certainly something we want to sort of formalize a little bit moving forward. Like once somebody has earned these various roles, what can they do with that in the community? Performance and assessment, we did a lot of thinking about this. Again, we really want to be innovative with the assessments, and we wanted it to be reflective of the kind of peer interest-based learning that was already occurring. So we did everything as challenge-based. So basically, there were various challenges for each badge that people would seek out on their own. None of this was forced on them. They would just go submit their work for a various badge, and then the badges were basically, or the work was basically peer assessed. So we thought peer assessment was really important because it's a peer learning environment. But again, all the basic badges were just assessed by any peer in the community, and you had to get 3 yes votes to earn the badge. Expert level badges were assessed by gurus or by other people that had already earned that badge. So, so they still were your peers, but we could kind of ensure a certain level of knowledge. Permanence. So again, this is another thing we thought about as well. I think all of our hard skill badges should absolutely expire, but we really didn't think that the soft skills should, or didn't really feel strongly about, or didn't feel that we had enough understanding of that to really put any expiration on them. At this point, we actually didn't build in expiration because this was an alpha pilot, but we are currently working on that right now. So I think definitely our hard skills will expire, and people will have to come back to the site and take a sort of refresher assessment to up their badge or to re-earn their badge. Portability and transparency. Again, we knew we were plugging into the Open Badge infrastructure and had decided we were going to push all of the badges into the Open Badge infrastructure, but they also were displayed on the peer-to-peer profile kind of immediately after you earned them. So there was a sort of an indicator within the community, an easy way for people to understand skills and reputation within the community, and then everything was pushed into the Open Badge infrastructure so that then it had value outside of that community as well. And so here's just a little diagram of kind of how that outside of the community thing works. But basically, again, the peer-to-peer university school webcraft badges are pushed into the Open Badge infrastructure, where they're combined with lots of other badges from other learning experiences, and then that learner or user can sort of combine them or create groups and share them out with various audiences based on sort of the sort of goals or results that they're going for. Protection, so again, this is avoiding gaming. We built a couple things into the assessments, which are pretty lightweight, but again, I said with the peer assessment, you had to have 3 peers actually review and vote on your vote yes on your work before you could earn the badge. So we wanted to make it harder than just you submitting it and having your friend vote yes. So you had to have 3 separate peers vote yes. So that was one thing, and then we also just required that there was basically a justification comment for every vote. So again, it wasn't just as easy to just vote up yes, but you had to leave some kind of justification for why you were voting yes. And obviously we weren't policing it as they were doing it, but it gave us some data as we were going back to just see the kinds of thought that people were putting into the assessment. So so these were really lightweight ways to just kind of avoid gaming. And again, I think we probably will have to have more things in place as the system's built out and as the badges have more value. But just to show how we were thinking about it initially. Endorsement, obviously Mozilla endorsed the badges. Mozilla was involved in the making of the badges, but kind of moving forward, that we are talking with like MIT. Thinking about how there's various people that could sign either some or all of the badges to add more information and value. Design, basically we had the Mozilla brand on the skill badges, and then both the Mozilla and peer-to-peer on the kind of softer skill community badges. Part of this was just kind of playing around with it. We heard from the community that Mozilla was pretty strong brand for web development skills, and that really kind of motivated people to earn those badges, whereas the kind of more community social skill badges were important as Mozilla skills, but also sort of really meant a lot within the community. So kind of played around with that, as well as shapes, the gear shape, although some people say it looks like a Reese's peanut butter cup, but it's supposed to be a gear. Was supposed to indicate the harder skills, that kind of thing. So team, I put up the slide just to show that it wasn't a one-person job by any means. There was an assessment person, a content person, 2 developers, project manager, community manager, and the community. So you certainly don't have to provide all of this, and you don't have to feel that you have to provide all of this. Again, the idea is that if your design is picked, we will help build out this team. But again, it's not something that that is just kind of a sort of single siloed type of work. And then technology, we actually had to build a separate system for the badges for the pilot, which was not ideal because it was separate from the learning environment, but just it was something that we actually had to build to manage the badges, manage the assessments, and so that might be the case with some of the badge systems that you're thinking about. So that's really it. I'm sorry I sped up at the end because I wanted to leave time for questions. But yeah, as Sheryl said, stage 2 is open now, obviously, and proposals are due the 17th of January. And again, proposals should be aligned with winning content, so you're either proposing a badge system for some of the content that either won stage 1 or is the collaborator content, or you can propose your idea with your own content, just knowing that if you're picked as a winning design, that you will later be matched up with some of the winning content. So that is all, and I think I will hand it over to Sheryl for questions. Sheryl, are you there? Ruby?
Hi, this is Ruby. We'll be right there. We're having just a brief technical issue, but Erin, you can pass the screen back to me, and we'll be ready to go in just a moment. Folks, this is Ruby, just letting you know Sheryl will be right back with us. Something went wrong with her computer just at the perfect moment. So we'll be right back with you. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Sorry about that. We try to predict whatever could go wrong, and there's just some things that you can't seem to foresee. Anyway, I hope everybody can hear. I'm just going to move to a new computer, and I'm going to ask questions that have come in. I also wanted to say that David Theo Goldberg has been able to join us, which is great. David has deep, wide knowledge of the process of applying, and I know some people who are applying for stage 2 have questions about that. So if you have questions, feel free to submit those. I see we've got a couple of those in. And David, thank you for joining us. And if you can hear me, please say hello so we know that you're able to be unmuted.
I can now speak. Hi, everybody. Great to be on. I have a hard deadline of about 10:55 our time, so another 15 minutes.
Great. Well, I'll start with one of the questions that has come in, and in case anybody didn't catch that, David's going to have to leave promptly to be at a different meeting. We wanted to take advantage of the fact he could join us. So we'll start, Erin, I hope that's okay. We'll start with a question for David. The question is, assuming that we submit a successful application and are chosen to advance to stage 3, we're wondering how the collaboration between stage 1 winners will work during the time before we meet for the finals. Will there be any facilitation from the competition to get us started, or do the teams take this one and manage it using their own resources?
Well, the resource question first is yes. We'll obviously facilitate the introductions and getting you going with each other, but the rest of the month of February will be spent with you and your partner taking the initiative in engaging with each other. And obviously, if you need any assistance or facilitation along the way, we'll do what we can upon request to accommodate you. That will not include resources, as I say, will not include resources that will pay for you to get together physically before San Francisco at the end of February.
Great, thank you. And I should also say too, if the people who have submitted questions feel that we haven't got to the point they were trying to make, just resubmit or let us know, and we'll try to circle back and help answer the question more succinctly.
Sheryl, can I just add one thing, and that is we will cover the costs of travel for both partnering entities to San Francisco for the finalists.
Oh, great. Important detail to know. Good, thank you. So I'm going to ask another process question, and this one seems to be one maybe for both of you. I'm trying to understand what kind of technical criteria the judges will be looking for. I have very little or no technical skills to design a badge system, but I have a good conceptual design. Should I find a programmer or web developer to help me with my submission to make it as competitive as possible?
Erin, do you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. So you don't. There are no expectations of kind of a lot of technical elements in the proposal. Obviously, if you've thought through things, you know, like various systems or technologies, then definitely include it. But that is not required. And if you know a developer offhand that you can easily pull in, certainly, again, that's just going to help you think through some more of your proposal or of your system. But certainly, given that there's 2 weeks left, that is not required, and that won't necessarily make you more competitive. I think the most important thing is to really you know, kind of put your best foot forward and describe what you know best. And certainly, and I wasn't incredibly clear about this, but I mean, obviously these are badge systems and there's lots of elements to it, but the most important pieces are, you know, are kind of the badges and the criteria around those badges. So obviously that, if that's what you feel really comfortable with, that is certainly an incredibly important piece. At the end of the day, these badge systems will need to have the supporting technologies, but we can help fill that gap for you and help find developers on the back end if that's necessary. So certainly, if you have somebody on hand that you can quickly bring on board, great. If not, though, don't not apply or hold yourself back, because we can help with that.
Can I just add, you know, given Erin's remarks, I think it would be helpful for you to indicate in your stage 2 application that you're thinking forward about engaging the technology and a technology person or persons in the stage 2 application, just as a way of indicating that you're paying attention to this, and you know, were you to be chosen, you might want to indicate how you would go about engaging a technology person to facilitate the badge development down the road.
I think that's very helpful. We've had quite a few questions that seem to be trying to figure out similar levels of detail, and I think that's a great answer. The next question that we have, and this seems to be very similar to some questions that are have come up in previous webinars that we've posted. We've archived those on dmailcompetition.net's blog. We'll ask this one again. Are the specifications that are available at openbadges.org the final set of specs, or do you expect or allow for changes in the future?
Certainly this is an evolving project and process. You know, we're sort of we're trying to support the ecosystem, but obviously the ecosystem doesn't really exist yet. So we really see that as evolving with the ecosystem, and our goal is to, again, just really support it and not constrain it in any way. That said, the specification that is there now certainly has been very kind of thoughtfully worked through with a very, very large group of advisors across, you know, sort of educators and developers and a lot of people, like a lot of people on this call probably. So we feel pretty confident that the specification we have now is a really good starting place that is sort of very simple and minimal enough, again, to support innovation, not constrain it, but also robust enough to really kind of sort of make the badges carry value. So so it's a little bit of a non-answer, but basically the specification is in a pretty good place right now, and if it changes at all, it will change because there's a lot of need for that from the community and from people like you moving forward.
Thanks, Erin. This next question, if we are open to being matched with ourselves and plan to apply as Stage 2 applicants with our Stage 1 selves, but we would also like to be considered and be competitive to win as a Stage 2 applicant matched with others, how should we address this in our proposal?
I think you want to just be upfront about it and say exactly that in as straightforward and open a way as you can. This is not unique. We've had these inquiries to date, and we are open both to your partnering with yourself in terms of learning content, as you put it, and with projecting yourself as a potential partner for other potential design partner partnered with other learning content. Should it be deemed appropriate. So I think you just need to indicate that and indicate how your proposal at Stage 2 would speak to not just to the specific learning content that is your own, but speak more generically to other learning content if you're serious about being considered as a potential partner for other learning content other than your own.
Thanks, David. The next question, the badge system that would be great for our learning organization may be different than what Mozilla Foundation is looking for as a good badge system. Should we be thinking about applying as though, I'm trying to make this make a little bit more sense, but I think the question has to do with they have a badge system in mind that works for their learning organization, but perhaps there are different things that are being valued by the Mozilla open badge infrastructure. I think this is a question trying to understand the judging on the criteria involved, and I'm not sure if that's a question either of you want to tackle or if we should try another question.
Erin, do you want to start quickly? I have one thing to say to it. But,
yeah, I mean, I would just say, first of all, that certainly Mozilla doesn't have in their mind what anything super grounded about what a successful badge system should be, because again, they are going to be very different in that the purpose of the way we've built the open badge infrastructure is to allow there to be lots of variety and innovation in the badge systems themselves. So we're not dictating that. The only thing that we are sort of requiring is that once you've actually issued a badge, the sort of information that's carried with that badge needs to match our specification. But there's tons and tons of room for innovation on your end around the badge system design, and we highly, highly encourage that.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that, concur completely with Erin, and just stress the all but last point, which is that whatever you develop needs to be interoperable with OBI. That's a given. And if it's not, then your application won't go forward. And
just to add one thing on top of that, just to clarify, is at Stage 2, again, because you don't have to be very technical, it might be as simple as you saying in your proposal that you plan to be interoperable with the open badge infrastructure. You might not get to that detail, but that is a requirement. But actually getting down to that technical detail, sort of might not happen in Stage 2, but certainly something that needs to be on your radar.
And Thank you both. One thing I wanted to just mention, we are getting a couple of, in some of our different social media channels, we're seeing that people are looking for potential stage 2. They're starting to do outreach to try and get people interested in writing a proposal that will go for whatever learning content the stage 1 winner has put out there. And I'm seeing it most likely it's going to be on Twitter under DM badges. So if you are a stage 2 winner and you want to have a conversation with the stage 1 winner, the place that seems to be happening the most is on Twitter, and I would look under DML badges and DML or open badges as well. Hashtag DML badges, hashtag open badges for those who are looking for.
Sheryl, I think you mean if you're a stage 2 applicant and you want to partner with a stage 1 winner.
Yes.
You said winners for both, right?
I'm sorry, yes. If you are an applicant in stage 2, or if you are a stage 1 winner and you are trying to find each other, it looks like there are the beginnings of some conversations of that happening on Twitter under the 2 hashtags I mentioned. The next question, can assessment criteria be modified after a badge has been issued?
So yes and no. I mean, there certainly once a badge has been issued on your site, you know, you're sort of managing how that assessment works, and so so I guess a badge is sort of tied to the assessment that it was that someone had to complete to get it. That said, in terms of how the badge lives in the Open Badge infrastructure, one of the pieces of metadata is a criteria URL, and that's supposed to point back to your website, and that's supposed to describe essentially the criteria and assessment that someone would have to do or had to do to earn that badge. So because that is a web page on your site, you could change that. Obviously, that could get a little confusing if somebody's already earned the badge and then that's changed. But certainly there is that flexibility, because again, it's all it is a URL on our system that's pointing back to your site on something that you totally manage. So.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. I know David has to leave promptly. This question is interesting. Once I am paired, or if I am paired with a stage 1 winner, are we able to adapt the stage 1 winning content? I think that means that as they are working together, is there potential to change what the original learning content, winning content, may have been included in the proposal?
So my take on that would be that, I mean, I don't think we can sort of make an absolute statement about that, because it's going to be dependent on the sort of content provider's willingness there. The purpose of stage 3 is really to give the designers and the content owners time to really kind of come up with the final badge system and make sort of any adjustments necessary. And so there's certainly that time and sort of the kind of connection and resources to do that. But again, it will sort of be dependent on the content provider's willingness for that as well.
Two questions just came in from Twitter. One is, can you give some examples of how individuals display their badges earned from systems that exist now? I think the reference is, Erin, you had a slide showing badges on Facebook, but maybe there are some other examples?
Yeah, so basically the idea is that
I'm just going to get off. I'm sorry. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. I'm sorry I have to.
Thanks,
okay,
David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
People can create subgroups of badges and then share them out across various sites. So, for example, and used in my example on kind of WordPress or your personal blog, you know, people might decide to display all of their badges, whereas in a social network like Facebook, they might, you know, choose the kind of more social badges versus on a career site. We're working with a site called Top Jobs, I think, Inside Jobs, as well as a few others, and we're in conversations with like LinkedIn there might be, you might take the sort of more job-related or skill badges and create a subgroup of those and share those out across that site. So it's really about kind of who the community is on a specific site and what your goals are, and then it gives you the flexibility to sort of combine your badges in a way that sort of creates the story that you want to tell for that particular community.
Great. I think we are at the end of our time. We've got a couple questions came across on Twitter. Erin, I don't know if you need to jump right away, but if this is an easy one. Okay. We've got one that says, can you say a little bit more about the supplemental visual materials you're inviting with the 1,500-word proposal?
Yeah. So I mean, so 1,500 words is, can be limiting, especially when, as I just went through with all my slides, there's potentially a lot that you might be kind of talking about. So you can use those addendums or supplemental materials to include diagrams if you have kind of ideas around the technical systems, or providing kind of case studies or more thoughts around how the badges might work. But also you could just include the actual badge images. If you have some ideas around what the badges look like, certainly you could include that as a separate file. So again, it's really anything to sort of add kind of more contextual information or thinking around your badge proposal. I mean, I think the bulk of your 1,500 words should really be about expressing the badge system that you have in mind and sort of some of those thinking around those characteristics and the kind of value that you see. And then above and beyond that, you can kind of move things out to the supplemental materials.
Well, thank you, Erin. We are now over our predicted time to end, so we're going to close things down. We'll post this as an archive on dmlcompetition.net's blog. And stay tuned to the blog as well, and also to Twitter, our tweets and hashtags, DML badges and open badges, for mentions about any upcoming webinars, and also you can send your questions into the contact box located on dmlcompetition.net if we didn't get to your question today. Erin, thank you so much, and David's left, but thank you to David, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck.